Happy Saturday. Welcome into the Saturday Show, 97.5 DKSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza. Alex Napoles back joining me today. Alex, how's it going, man?
Good, man. Good to be back. Had a nice weekend last week doing some high school soccer, but good to be back sitting across from you, getting ready to talk about a winless in October Utah Utes.
What a season it's been for the Utes, and
Yeah.
not in a good way. Of course, so much excitement right now. Rivalry week next week as Utah will host BYU, 8:15 p.m. kickoff, it was announced. So a lot of anticipation coming up for that big game. Again, that is next Saturday. Before we get into things, though, Alex, let's start off the show. As we always do, let's talk about our highlights of the week. What you got?
Highlight of the week for me has to be Halloween. Obviously, this week it was Halloween. Just celebrating, watching some scary movies, watching football that night too as well.
Yeah.
Thursday night football going on. And then got to film for Jeremy on JJ and Alex, so I had a jam-packed Halloween day, and that was probably the highlight of my week, man.
I'd agree. I love Halloween. I love the holidays. And it's funny. So I produce Jake and Ben every day. Ben loves holidays as well. He talks about all the Halloween decorations that he has, goes all out, loves dressing up, all that stuff. Jake hates holidays. I shouldn't say he hates it, but he doesn't really get into it. And he's kind of just like, oh, it's whatever. So it's kind of fun seeing them, talk about holidays differently.
Right.
I'm definitely on the side of really leaning into it. And I think it's a lot of fun. So I'm with you. I love Halloween. Let's hear your top 3 Halloween candy.
Oh, man.
Scott Gerard has been doing this all week. He put out his top 10 candy, and I had some opinions about it. So, Alex, I want to hear what you have to say about your top 3 Halloween candy real quick.
I think in no particular order, I'm going to go Sour Patch Kids, somewhere in there, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and Starbursts.
Starburst.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love Starbursts.
Like that.
Yeah.
Dark Horse, third answer. So, Scotty G, this is his Twitter post. Halloween candy power rankings. Number 1, Peanut Butter Cups. Number 2, Snickers. Number 3, Take 5. Number 4, Kit Kat. Number 5, Twix. He had 10. I won't get into the 10. I replied, though. I said, you need some Sour Patch Kids in there.
That's what I'm saying.
That would be my number 1 as well.
That's what I'm saying, man.
I'm more of like the gummy candy types as opposed to like the chocolates. But I do like, of course, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, Reese's Pieces, all their festive, the pumpkins or whatever, and then you get the Christmas trees for Halloween and whatever. But I'm with you there, Alex. I need some Sour Patch Kids in my life. So
I think Trunk or Treat is ruining Halloween. And
you think so?
Yes, because I didn't have one single person knock on my house this year.
Dude, that's
there was
sad,
no
actually.
trick-or-treaters.
But you were prepared. You had a bowl of candy.
Yeah, I got some candy. Got some candy ready. And I didn't have a single knock. I was watching football, waiting for people to knock, and I didn't have one person stop by.
That's interesting. We haven't been trick-or-treating in a while. At least I haven't. I don't know about
I
you.
went last year.
So, yeah, I would assume, obviously it's a safe way to do it, right? You don't have to worry as much about kids walking the streets at night. But
Razor blades and candy.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot safer, convenient way to get it done, the trunk or treats. I hope it doesn't kill the traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating, though, because I do think that's fun. And I have a lot of fond memories of those days.
Yeah. Yeah, trick-or-treating was always my favorite growing up. And it's weird because, I guess, I don't know if this applies to you or probably anybody else, but my neighborhood barely was decorated. Like, I remember growing up, every other house was decorated for Halloween. But in my neighborhood, there wasn't really much houses like decorated and ready to go for Halloween. And then I remember a whole bunch of kids trick-or-treating when I was growing up. And then this year, like I said, I didn't really see that many.
Yeah, I didn't get any trick-or-treaters either. I live in an apartment complex, so it's a little different. This is our 3rd Halloween at this place, my wife and I. And every year we buy a bowl of candy just in case. And every year, no trick-or-treaters. We're still yet to get a single trick-or-treater.
And the one year you don't prepare and you don't buy candy is the year the year everybody comes.
Thanksgiving is next, and then we get into Christmas season. I love this time of year. So
it's the best time of the year.
It is really the best time to just have some fun.
Absolutely.
So, Alex, let's have fun today. Let's get into some fun talk. Of course, the big news of the week, I think, Kyle Whittingham said earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, that Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose are going to split reps at quarterback, and that's a bit of a surprise. Not a surprise. Well, let's go back to last week's game, of course, against Houston, right? Because Isaac Wilson got benched, and Brandon Rose came in, filled in. The Utes still lost. It was the fourth loss in a row. And then you get to Monday, and ahead of this BYU game, ahead of this bye week, Kyle Whittingham says the two quarterbacks are going to split reps. I'm surprised in the sense that this makes no sense to me as far as why you would ever name Isaac Wilson the backup to Cam Rising. If Brandon Rose is close enough in talent to Isaac Wilson, he should have been the backup all along.
That's the thing, though, is obviously we saw Brandon Rose come into this game against Houston. Kyle Whittingham said it was to provide a spark, to find a spark, to look for something, look for some positive to come out of this Houston game. But really, Christian, I wasn't impressed with Brandon Rose. And I don't know if that's has to do with the lack of confidence this offense has. I don't know if it has to do with his lack of experience. But you remember last year, we heard a lot of positives,
right,
a lot of good things about Brandon Rose. He comes in against Houston, again, to provide a spark, and I just didn't see it.
Well, if you remember back to last year, as you said, in the preseason, in spring ball, in the summer and all that stuff, there was a lot of positive talk about Brandon Rose. Then he had kind of a freak injury where he tripped on a ball or something and had to have surgery. So he missed most of the year. He was available to play in their bowl game against Northwestern, but who did they play instead, Alex?
Bryson Barnes.
And Luke Batari.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So, and no offense to Luke Batari, but I had never heard of him up until that point, up until they announced that he was going to dress for that game.
That Colorado game, too.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right, the Colorado game. So you've got this guy in Brandon Rose that has had opportunities to play before this. He had all of the summer to beat out a true freshman in Isaac Wilson to take over the backup quarterback spot, and he couldn't do it. So the fact that now we're to this point where they can't decide between this true freshman that they named as a backup quarterback because of all this potential that he has, they're deciding between that and this guy that they've basically been actively trying not to play in Brandon Rose. That tells me that they're in a horrible spot.
Yes.
It tells me that if Brandon Rose was not good enough to beat Isaac Wilson out in the summer, why should we expect him to beat Isaac Wilson now? Why are we even having this quarterback battle? If you want to have the confidence to name Isaac Wilson the backup, you have to be able to live with the highs and lows that you're going to get because of his age, because of his lack of experience. They're foolish if they're expecting him to come in and be a really good quarterback as a freshman. And everybody talks about the potential. I get it. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have the potential to be good. He very well could be in a year or two. But based off of what has happened to Isaac Wilson this season, I am worried for his future because damaging the confidence of a young quarterback, we see it all the time in the NFL. College, we see it a lot, but people don't really bat an eye at it because it's college football and there's 200, 300 quarterbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really care. But just once you get that psyche damaged, it's really hard to come back from that because the quarterback position is such a mentally challenging position. They got to be the strongest person mentally on your team. And, putting Isaac Wilson through all of this and then saying, oh, now you got to win this job back because you were benched last week against Houston and you have lost 4 straight games. How can Isaac Wilson bounce back from this? Who does this quarterback battle really benefit?
There's not a lot of benefit that I can see from this, right? Like you mentioned, this is just I think this is just a detriment to Isaac Wilson's confidence. I just think it's a detriment to Brandon Rose's confidence. I get wanting to find answers. I get it. Because there's been no answers. This offense has been lackluster. It's been disappointing. It's been hard to watch at times, man. I get that. I get you want to find a spark. I get you want to find some kind of answer to get the ball moving and to get the ball going for Utah. But it doesn't. I don't think this whole conversation, this whole battle of Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose splitting reps, I don't think it benefits Rose or Wilson.
Exactly.
I don't see a benefit in either of this for those two guys, two young guys, right? Brandon Rose is a sophomore, true freshman. Isaac Wilson. You want them to have, if they're going to be the quarterback for this Utah Utes side, either one of them, you want them to have confidence. You want them to be confident in their play. You want them to be confident in this offense. You want them to be confident with their teammates. And I feel like there's no confidence. There's no confidence, no trust.
And that's why they've lost 4 in a row.
There you go.
That's why they lost to one of the worst teams in the conference in Houston. I mean, these guys were awful. Houston is so bad. And Utah lost to them because, like you're saying, Alex, the team has given up. The team has no reason to believe in either of these two guys. And it just seems like a bad plan from Utah the whole way out. And I go back to when they named Isaac Wilson as the backup, and I was just so confused as to why a true freshman would leapfrog everybody else in the lineup. And we haven't even talked about Sam Hewitt. Apparently, he had season-ending surgery. I can't remember on what it was on, if it was ever even revealed, but he was a guy that he was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, and he bounced around colleges. So I was never really surprised that he was behind Rose and Wilson in the QB battle. But people were kind of confused because we hadn't seen him. We didn't see him last week or 2 weeks ago. There was never any mention of him. And then all of a sudden, Kyle Whittingham joins DJ and PK yesterday morning and is like, oh, yeah, by the way, Sam Hewitt, he hasn't played because his season's over. And everybody was just kind of confused on that. So regardless, the point I'm trying to make is that naming Isaac Wilson the backup was a mistake in the first place. And now they've dug themselves too deep. And it's almost a can't-win situation. Because if Isaac Wilson loses this quarterback battle, if Brandon Rose starts next week against BYU, why would Isaac Wilson want to stay at Utah? And if Isaac Wilson does win the QB battle, I still think there's a lot higher chance of him transferring than there was had he, been third or fourth string to start the season. I'm not saying that I think he's going to transfer, but I think that chance is higher than it was 3 months ago.
Absolutely. And look, if Brandon Rose trots out first drive against BYU next weekend, I think not only are you positioning yourself for a rough end of the season, because again, we're just going to continue to have this quarterback battle. We're just going to, I hope they can figure it out, but I think they're just going to end up having the same questions on offense. But you're also setting yourself up for a lot of questions in the offseason. Where does this QB position for Utah go in the offseason?
Yeah.
Right? What happens in the future, especially if someone transfers out? Because then you don't have answers. You don't have anyone coming up.
And it's hard to think about that right now. I mean, there's still 4 games left in the season, but it's just, this feels like a gut punch, right? I mean, this team was picked to win the Big 12, and they have lost 4 games in a row, including losses to Arizona and Houston and even TCU, teams that have, I'd say, I don't know, Arizona has looked good at times, but especially TCU and Houston. Like, those are not good football teams that Utah should not have lost to. And their defense kept them in the games. I mean, less than 20 points allowed to Houston and TCU. So they definitely had a chance to win. Utah did. But it's like, this feels like the lowest point Utah football has been at for a long time. And then you're right, looking ahead to the offseason, it's just dark and gloomy because it's like we don't know how they're going to get out of this. Whereas, let's say Brandon Rose was the backup quarterback and it was Brandon Rose losing these games. Maybe Isaac Wilson gets some playing time, but at least you'd be able to say, okay, we've got this kid who we're developing with a lot of potential in Isaac Wilson who could take over the program next year, and we should be able to go from there. Now, with all of this, I truly think that Isaac Wilson has been damaged, and it's going to be hard to bounce back from this. And if he does, then that's tremendous and that's awesome and that's great. And I really am rooting for Isaac Wilson to see as much success as he can and create as much success as possible. But the fact of the matter is, like, there is no way that this is not damaging to
Absolutely.
Isaac Wilson right now.
No,
and I
absolutely.
feel so bad for him.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. I feel bad for both of them, man. They're both in a really tough situation.
Brandon Rose as well.
They're both in a really hard, really tough situation where this season has been far from where that we were expecting. We're far from expectations for media, for us, for fans, for everybody. You're falling way short of those expectations. There's a lot of pressure on, again, a sophomore and a true freshman to figure out this Utah offense and to be the answer. So it's tough. It's tough, but obviously, like you mentioned, I'm rooting for Isaac Wilson. I'm rooting for Brandon Rose. I want both of them to succeed. I want both of them to be good, because in turn, this Utah offense can be good. And there's a lot of talent on this offense. Just right now, it's damaged.
Yeah,
And there's
nobody.
no answers.
Nobody's happy. I think it's hard because these guys want to go out and compete, and you've got a lot of seniors on this team that understandably want to improve their draft stock. I mean, there's a lot of NFL talent on this roster, and that's the truth. I mean, there really is a ton of talent on this Utah roster, which makes it weird that they haven't been able to put it together this season.
Yeah.
But again, these guys over these last 4 games, they want to do what they can to get noticed by pro scouts.
In turn, Christian, and I don't, kind of changing the subject a little bit here, but Mekhi Bernard, those comments after the Houston game, they're not good.
So Mekhi Bernard was asked basically what the problem, and I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember word for word the exact quote. He was asked if he knows what the problem is. And he basically said, I do know what the problem is, but I'm not going to tell you, which is really concerning.
Yeah.
Because this is a guy who's been with this program for a very long time.
A really long time.
And he's put in a lot of work, and he's done great things himself this season. And shout out to Mekhi Bernard, really, for taking over that running back spot and just being a dog all year. But it is concerning for a player to stand up there and say, there is a problem. I know there's a problem. I know what the problem is. Everybody in the program knows what the problem is, but I can't really say. I don't know. Are you wanting this? No, I don't want to speculate on what said problem would be, but it just shows that there is a divide in the locker room right now.
Yes.
And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Only the Utah players and coaches know what it is, I guess, but it's like, I think that just shows that this team is dejected right now, and not necessarily fractured, but it's almost beyond repair.
You could say fractured.
Well, fractured, I think, would imply that it can't be salvaged, right? I do think for whatever reason, and maybe I'm just holding out hope, working in media, hoping there's a cool storyline. If somehow Utah beats BYU next week, I do think that can truly save Utah's season, right? But of course, if they lose to Cougars, if they get blown out at home for their 5th straight loss in a rivalry game,
Oof.
I mean, if you think it's fractured now, right?
Oh man, I can't even fathom. I can't even begin to believe the unrest, the craziness that would ensue if BYU comes into Rice-Eccles Stadium a week from today and just absolutely dominates Utah.
Right.
Just takes them to the cleaners.
I mean, all the Utah fans are selling their tickets to BYU fans. It's already going to be at least 50-50, it sounds like.
Oh, man.
I can't even imagine what it's going to look like, the shots over the stadium and it's half blue. Like, that's crazy.
And that's where we're at, man.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
It makes sense that Utah fans wouldn't want to go. I personally, if I had tickets and I was a Utah fan, I would still go to the game just because, like I said, you never know what could happen. It's a rivalry game. But I get if you're a diehard Ute fan and you don't want to go see this because you're sick of it, it's understandable. This has been, like I said, one of the toughest Utah seasons, at least definitely since I've been, a part of media or whatever. And that's only been a couple of years. But
absolutely.
I don't know the last time Utah has had a season this bad.
Yeah. I mean, from what I can't really remember much of those early Pac-12 days for Utah, right? When they had the, 5-7 seasons. Slow starts to their Pac-12 play, but
right.
I mean, this is a little bit different, right? We talked about in the preseason where we talked about how this was a roster built to be good in this Big 12 conference. This was a roster. This was a team who we weren't the only ones who thought it, right? Everybody thought
there
it.
There weren't expectations for the Utes to win the Pac-12 their first year.
Everybody
knew there was going to be growing pains.
But to be this low and to be this poor to start their Big 12 conference play, it's been rough to watch, man. It's been tough to watch. And again, there's just so much disappointment from the fail of expectations for this Utah team. And there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
There's so many questions that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed quick because BYU is it's not going to be an easy task. It's going to be a very difficult game, a rivalry game at your home stadium. You don't have a lot of time to figure it out, but you need to figure it out quick.
And it is good that they have this bye week to figure things out as much as possible. But my question to you, Alex, after spending this whole segment talking about it, who do you think is going to start at quarterback next week for Utah? Is it going to be Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose?
If I was a betting man, I'd probably say Isaac Wilson. I think Isaac Wilson still has the edge.
I would too, which again, going back to my point earlier, makes it all the more frustrating.
Yes.
If he is still the favorite to start next week, why would you introduce the drama of a QB battle and making him? And maybe that's Kyle Whittingham's mentality, is saying, okay, we handed the job to this kid in the summer. Let's make him earn it right now.
Right.
And maybe that'll give him some confidence.
You sharpen iron with iron, right?
I guess.
You light a fire under these two guys. You throw in a match, you light it on fire, and you hope that they answer and respond to that fire. They respond to this adversity. They respond to this competition, right? They make each other better through battling out this quarterback, quote unquote, quarterback battle.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like that's what this is. I feel like that's what Kyle Whittingham coming out and saying that they're going to split the reps and there is and implying that there's a QB battle. I think it's just an opportunity to light a match under these two guys and hope that the competition kind of awakens something in them. And they come out looking, again, hopefully better against BYU.
It could go both ways.
Yeah.
This decision to do this right now is going to make or break the Ute season if it hasn't been broken already. Meanwhile, for BYU, I mean, it's basically sunshine and roses on the other side, right? Kalani Sitake has these guys rolling. These guys believe in each other week in and week out. We talk about it. It seems like everything is going BYU's way. Whenever they need something to happen, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's just a testament to the mentality of this team. And it's such a stark contrast. And this is what you get when everybody buys into something. And maybe it's because BYU was picked to finish so poorly. I don't know what the main factor is. But regardless, I mean, they're 8-0 on the year. They're number 9 in the AP poll. The college football playoff projections come out next week. Can't wait to see where BYU is ranked in that first projection there. But really, on paper, the Cougars should dominate next week at the University of Utah.
From everything we've seen in these first 8 games from both sides, it would suggest that BYU is going to come in and wipe the floor with Utah. But it's a rivalry game. And we've talked about it before, Christian, where when it comes to these rivalry games, you got to throw everything out the window. Everything you thought you knew about these two sides, throw it away because it's just different. The rivalry is just that different. However, BYU's looking good. This is a year in the making for BYU, right? Last year, they had a tough year to Big 12 play. Kalani Sitake and company they just kept belief. They kept unwavering belief in each other, in themselves. They're proving everybody wrong, and they're 8-0.
Obviously, with the Cougars being undefeated and Utah struggling, only one conference win so far. But let's put that aside. If you could look at one thing that BYU, you're expecting BYU to do better than Utah next week to give them the win, what would it be?
Moving the ball.
Okay.
Moving the ball on offense. Jake Retzlaff has been really good at moving the ball. Utah's offense have not been good at moving the ball.
Right. Okay. I think I'm with you there. I mean, even before they had LJ Martin back and he looked amazing, BYU has been able to move the ball for most of the year. But the last two games in particular, LJ Martin has come in and really just put up numbers. I'm looking at his stats against UCF last week. I mean, 15 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Like, it's what you want from your bell cow. And as we talked about, Mekhi Bernard has been great for Utah. But outside of Mekhi Bernard, nobody else has been consistent.
Well, even then, now I feel like Mekhi has declined in the last couple of weeks. But
well, it's hard when you're seeing 10-man boxes.
There you go. It's not necessarily on him. Teams know that this Utah team right now is really struggling to move the ball, so they don't respect the passing game.
Right.
They stack the box, they stop Mekhi, and then in turn, you can't move the ball.
But BYU can.
Yeah.
And dude, let's talk. And we talk about him every week, but Darius Lassiter just
Phenomenal.
continuing to develop into a true star for this BYU program. He's been one of my favorite players to watch all season for the Cougars, and it seems like he and Jake Retzlaff really have just a phenomenal connection. And Lassiter is kind of the go-to guy. Again, like I said, it seems like whenever the Cougars need a play, it's Lassiter that's there.
I've been impressed with him and Roberts.
Yeah.
I got to give a little bit of love, too, to Chase Roberts, who I think as well is having an incredible season to go along with Darius Lassiter. Both of those guys have been stellar, absolute dogs for this BYU offense. And you know, I think Roberts, up to this point, has 4 touchdowns. Darius Lassiter, like you mentioned, anytime they need a big play, anytime they need some kind of momentum, anytime they need anything down the field, it seems like it's always Darius Lassiter coming up and making those big plays. You go back to the Oklahoma State game, who scored that game-winning touchdown?
Lassiter.
Darius Lassiter.
What a beauty it was, man.
They both have been absolutely stellar. Retzlaff has been good in the air. He's been good on his feet. This BYU offense right now is rolling. The defense, too, has been really, really good.
Lassiter and Roberts both have 31 catches on the year, by the way. Lassiter has a little bit more yards, 504 yards, compared to 497 for Chase Roberts. So they're nearly identical. And both 4 touchdowns as well. So I'd say that's the key difference. I don't think it's lack of talent on Utah's end. Just going to the struggles at quarterback, right? And it's kind of what we saw from BYU last year. Last year BYU didn't have, whether it was a confidence thing, a skill issue, or maybe just a lack of playing time in general. They were not able to move the ball through the air, but they can this year. That's Utah now, is they have playmakers. We know what Brant Keithy can do. We know what Dorian Singer has been able to do in the past. Money Parks, he's done for the rest of the season, but before he was hurt, we know what Money Parks can do as well. So it's not for a lack of talent on Utah's end. It's just, I think you put it really well, Alex. To boil it down into its simplest form, BYU is able to move the ball, and Utah is not. And I think that's the key difference, and that's going to be the key difference a week from today.
Yeah, and in order to come back and have an opportunity to take down BYU inside your own home stadium, you got to move the ball more. It's basic football. You got to be able to move the ball. You got to be able to throw the ball. You got to be able to get something going on offense, because moving the ball for Utah has been incredibly lackluster. That TCU game, was it 85 yards at the half? It's not good. It's
No,
not good enough.
That's awful.
It's not good enough. They need to find some type of answer on offense in order to move the ball, some kind of confidence in order to move the ball, and that's what it's going to come down to.
Looks like Ohio State just scored, by the way. They're playing Penn State, number 2 and number 3 teams in the country right now, facing off this morning. We'll keep you updated on that game, but that's just an aside. I do want to point out real quick, I know we're running out of time this segment, but Utah made a change at offensive coordinator. Mike Bajakian took over for Andy Ludwig. Obviously, it benefits him having the bye right now. He would have liked it last week before they played any games, but it's obviously a quick turnaround being named the offensive coordinator Sunday night or Monday morning or whatever, and then having to play less than a week later. Now, Bajakian gets this week and next week to prepare for BYU, to prepare for BYU's defense, and more so to prepare whoever his quarterback is for BYU. And I was filling in on JJ and Alex yesterday, and for their Football Fridays, Stevenson Sylvester joins, former Utah linebacker. And Sly was making a good point, and Riley Nelson was there as well, a former quarterback. Really, you just got to play to the strengths of whoever your quarterback is. And that's why I don't like that there's a QB battle going on, because you'd like to know who it's going to be. But if it is Isaac Wilson, you want to put him in a scenario where he's doing a lot of these bootleg play actions, getting him into space, because he, right now, is very comfortable using his legs.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be taken away from him. When you use play action and get the quarterback out of the pocket and basically cut the field in half, that makes the game a lot more simple for them. It simplifies their reads. It's a lot less for them to have to worry about. So let's see some of that.
You do have, I think, this bye week for Utah coming right before the big rivalry game. It's good, especially considering the situation that they're in, right? You have an opportunity in a week to not only get Mike Bajakian and this offense up to speed with how Bajakian with what Bajakian wants to do, but you also have an opportunity for Bajakian to figure out the best way to utilize the strength of Isaac Wilson.
Or Brandon Rose. Whoever it's going to be.
Or Brandon Rose.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. And that's the thing. We don't really know what Brandon Rose does best because we haven't seen him. Of course, the coaching staff has been working with him the past 2 years, so they hopefully should know by now. But I don't know. I don't know how mobile he is compared to Isaac Wilson. I don't know if you can really have the same sort of playbooks with them. But that's for Bajakian to figure out right now. So I don't know when we are going to know who Utah trots out. We might not know until kickoff. We've seen this before. But regardless, it's a tall task for Mike Bajakian, for Kyle Whittingham, for this Utah roster. This BYU team is the top dog in the Big 12 right now. But with it being a rivalry game, with it being at home, I wouldn't be surprised if Utah keeps it close. But I wouldn't be surprised if if it's a blowout.
How long, right here before we wrap this one up, how long before we see Luke Batari?
That's interesting. So if he had a real chance at stealing playing time from Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose, I think his name would have been in the mix for the QB battle.
Haven't heard one mention of him all year.
No.
Yeah.
The only thing I heard of him was last week when I saw on social media that he was traveling with the team instead of Sam Heward.
Yep.
Right?
That's it.
So I don't think we're going to see Luke Batari next week. But again, if this is a crap show, if Utah gets blown out at home against BYU, if maybe Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose both play next week, and if neither of them can get it done, maybe they say, why not? Let's go to Luke Batari. But I think the earliest that we would see him is Colorado, I guess, which is the game after BYU for Utah.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see him next week, though.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you.
We'll see, though. We will see. Again, a week from tonight at Rice-Eccles Stadium, BYU at Utah. Can't wait for that one. We're going to have amazing coverage all week here on The Zone. We're going to have tons of former players and coaches joining the station every week, so be sure to tune in. We're going to have a lot of big names. Guys that you haven't heard of or not heard from in a while. Sorry. Former professional athletes, former BYU and Utah players that were able to go pro, former BYU and Utah players that were able to do great things in their time for these schools. Again, they're going to be joining every show throughout the week. Be sure to stay tuned, and you won't want to miss it because we are all excited for this game next week.
We're going to have a lot of fun next week.
We are going to have so much fun. I think we're going to be, I don't want to spoil it yet. I think it might be a surprise, but I don't think we're going to be in studio.
Oh,
I guess I'll say.
Ooh.
But we'll see about that. Coming up on the other side of this break, Alex, I want to talk NFL. The trade deadline is coming up. We've seen some big moves made already. What else could we see? We'll hit that next. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. Alex, in the break, we were telling Sean, this is Sean's first time producing for us. We were telling him he better have some good rejoin music.
Hi, Sean.
1 for 1.
Hello.
1 for 1 so far, Sean.
Okay, good job.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Love it.
Doing a good job, man. All right.
Oh, man. Alex, let's talk some NFL. It's bye week for BYU, Utah, and Utah State. Of course, we're going to be hitting rivalry week super hard next week. We just talked about BYU and Utah, of course, in our last segment. If you missed it, we'll have it up in podcast form soon. You can go find it there. But NFL has been so much fun this season. The trade deadline is Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We've already seen some big trades. Everybody's making moves. The Chiefs traded for DeAndre Hopkins. The Bills, they traded for Amari Cooper. The Ravens just traded for Deontay Johnson. The Jets traded for Devontae Adams. A lot of moves so far, and the trade deadline isn't even here yet. So are there any teams that you're kind of keeping an eye on or any players that you think could potentially get moved?
Could potentially get moved. First, I want to talk about the moves that have already been made.
Okay, yeah.
I'm really hoping Amari Cooper can do really well for the Bills. I think the Bills have been missing kind of that number one standout wide receiver.
Everybody loves the Bills too.
And I mean, they look good this year. They look good.
Yeah.
And I thought for how much change came to the Buffalo Bills, I thought that there would be a little bit of a step back, but so far they've been able to kind of keep it together, which is really good. Really hope, and I think a lot of people are hoping for, Devontae Adams to kind of find that Green Bay form, kind of relive those Green Bay days with Aaron Rodgers.
He had a big game Thursday night.
He did come around on Thursday night, even going out and missing almost a majority of that third quarter with a precaution. They evaluated him for a little bit, came back into the game, got that touchdown grab late in the game. But the first game did not look good for Devontae Adams.
No, and the fact of the matter is the Jets, even though they won Thursday, they're still 3-6. And there's a lot of crap in the AFC. But there's, 7 playoff spots. I don't think the Jets could make it up to being a playoff team. They'd basically have to win out from here. And Aaron Rodgers has done it before. But
Yes.
at 41 years old, with an interim head coach, I think it's too much to ask of him.
I also want to say, let's hold the phone on the Jets, right? Everybody's freaking
Of
out.
course.
Everybody's freaking out that they won that game on Thursday night against the Texans, which the Texans are a good team, just really banged up at the moment.
Well, and their offensive line sucks.
Yeah. Also banged up at the moment, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's one game. Let's hold the playoff talks until they can string together a couple of good results. But I digress. Anyway, looking at teams to potentially make a change, I think the Cincinnati Bengals need to do something about that defense, man.
That's another team that if they have any chance to make the playoffs, they basically need to win out from here. Joe Burrow was asked about it, actually, and he said,
Yeah.
They need to get to 10 wins. They got to basically win 7 of their last 9, which to him, he says is doable, which I do believe that they probably could do. I mean, this team was in the Super Bowl not too long ago, but you're right there, Alex. Their defense has been atrocious. That's why they have been losing games this year. So I don't know if they could fix it with just one trade. I mean, there's a lot that's bad about the Cincinnati defense, but if they're serious about trying to make the playoffs this year, I would like to see them do something about it instead of saying, "Hey Joe, go out there and win it for us, man," because that hasn't worked.
Which at times, like, this offense has been really good, really explosive, really electric.
T. Higgins leads the league in receiving yards. Or, excuse me, Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase has been looking really good. T. Higgins has been solid. Joe Burrow, I think, is playing a lot better than he did last season. This offense is firing on all cylinders. However, your defense can't do anything to stop the other team's offense.
No.
We saw it against Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
That game that went to overtime. Jamar Chase had like 2 touchdowns in that game. Had a really crazy good game. But in turn, your defense couldn't do anything to stop Lamar Jackson. And that it's happened a couple times this season for Cincinnati. I want them to do something about that defense. Because I do believe that this Cincinnati team can be good.
In that game, Jamar Chase had 10 catches for 193 yards, 2
There you
tuds.
go. Thank you.
T. Higgins had 9 catches for 83 yards, 2 tutties as well. But goodness, I mean, it's Lamar Jackson, right? But he had 348 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. He added 55 yards on the ground himself. And every team's going to have trouble containing Lamar Jackson. But yeah, if you're the Bengals and you want to try and make the playoffs this year, let's see something. A team I'm keeping an eye on, Alex, is the Detroit Lions, another team that most people seem to really like.
Yeah.
This is a team that the majority of our childhood and growing up, they have been so bad.
Couple 0-16 seasons in there.
But last year they made the NFC Championship game. They were like a play away from going to the Super Bowl. And that would have been so awesome to see. Everybody's rooting for these guys to turn around and get it done. They're another team that they need some help on the defensive side. They had Aiden Hutchinson, star edge rusher. He broke his leg earlier in the year. So there have been rumors kind of circulating about this team needs to make a move for an edge rusher. Zadarius Smith on the Browns is a name that has been floated around. Myles Garrett has kind of been talked about as more of a pipe dream. Of course, the Lions would have to give up a ton of draft picks to make that happen. But getting one of the best edge rushers in the NFL on this Detroit Lions team, that would be something, right?
Aiden Hutchinson is a big loss.
That is a huge loss.
Huge loss. And I thought that this Lions defense was playing really good ball up until the unfortunate injury.
They really have been.
I think the past couple of weeks since Hutchinson has gone down, the defense has looked a little bit more susceptible. There's been a little bit less of a pass rush. But I think that can easily be fixed with just bringing in someone who can fill in and do the job until obviously down the road when Hutchinson can get back on the field. We wish him a speedy recovery because he is a top player.
He was off to a hot start. He led the league in sacks before he went down. Again, the trade deadline is Tuesday at 2 p.m. here. Normally, we don't see a lot of movement at the NFL trade deadline, but like we were talking about, we've seen a ton of trades made already. So maybe this year will be a little different. Couple big games coming up tomorrow, the Saints and the Panthers. I don't know why I said that one. That game's going to suck. Dolphins at Bills. How about that, Alex? Tua's back. The Bills played the Dolphins earlier in the year and looked really good. That's actually the game that Tua got hurt in.
Yes.
That one was in Miami, and the Bills dominated that game. This game tomorrow is in Buffalo, so do you think Buffalo's going to dominate again, or do you think the Dolphins are going to come back with some fire now that they have Tua Tagovailoa back?
Look, I know Tua's back, but I still think that this offense has got some things to figure out, as well as the defense. I've not been...
Defense is banged up, too.
Yeah, I've not been impressed with the Dolphins so far this year. I have been impressed with Buffalo. Yeah. I think Buffalo has been solid on both sides of the ball. I do foresee Buffalo taking that game against Miami again.
The Browns are hosting the Chargers. Jameis Winston got the start last week for Cleveland. He led them to a really fun win.
And he didn't look that bad.
He didn't look bad. He looked a lot better than Deshaun Watson had looked for the Browns all season. So that could be a fun one. The Chargers are pretty fun. I always love watching Justin Herbert play, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So that could be a sneaky good game.
It could. And I think once Harbaugh and this offense really figure it out, they're going to have a pretty solid offense, man. Herbert, I think, is a really good quarterback. They have some weapons in Ladd McConkey, who had a really good game last week.
Yeah.
Rookie receiver. And so I think once experience comes around and once more chemistry is built, I do think this Chargers offense can be better. J.K. Dobbins has looked good in the backfield. Just need to see a little bit more consistency out of this offense.
Broncos at Ravens. Broncos have been rolling the last couple of weeks, but they haven't played a good team. I mean, they looked really good against the Panthers last week. But
how about your boy Bo Nix?
Rookie of the month for
There you
October.
go.
I do think that the Ravens are going to be a really tough ask for Bo Nix and the Broncos to come in and beat. I am hoping it's a good game. I won't be surprised if it's not, though. It's in Baltimore. So we'll see there. Your Rams are at the Seahawks. That's always a fun matchup.
It is. It's always a good matchup. I thought the Rams looked a lot better last week, getting Puka back, getting Cooper Kupp back. Kyron Williams has been on an absolute tear.
Yeah.
In my opinion, one of the top running backs in the NFL. But Puka, questionable heading into this one.
Little banged up. He hurt his knee again, but Sean McVay says that he should be good to go because he's that tough of a dude.
Gotta love Puka. Obviously, the local connection with BYU. Really love to see him succeed in the NFL. Unfortunate that he's been banged up. However, I do think, and I said this at the beginning of the year, Christian, to you, if this offense can stay healthy, they are a good offense. We saw what this offense looks like without Puka, without Cooper the last couple of weeks. They get them back last week. They looked a lot better.
Yep.
If they can stay healthy, I like where the Rams are heading.
Big ask with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out wide as far as staying healthy. But you're right, Alex.
Yeah.
If they can do it, phenomenal. Another really fun matchup, wrapping this up, Lions at the Packers. NFC North, two of the top teams in that division.
Can we talk about how good the NFC North has been?
Oh, they're really, I mean, the Vikings started off really hot. They gave us a fun matchup against the Lions. When was that? I think 2 weeks ago. The Packers, of course, with Jordan Love are always going to be good. Caleb Williams has had his up and downs with the Bears. I do think they are the best division in football.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the Lions sitting at 6-1, Packers at 6-2, Minnesota lost 2 straight, but they're still 5-2, right? They had such a hot start to the year. The Bears have been a little bit more inconsistent, sitting at 4-3, but still, when they're on, they do look like a decent football team.
They've got a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the Lions, a really good playoff team in the Packers, and then a fun team that could also make noise in the playoffs in the Vikings. And then you've got, of course, really good roster with the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams. And then wrapping up, Colts at Vikings will be Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football, Bucks and Chiefs. I think that's going to be a fun game. The Bucks, of course, without their 2 top receivers, Mike Evans out for a couple weeks with a hamstring injury. Chris Godwin out for the rest of the year with a dislocated ankle. Bummer for them, but I think that's going to be a great matchup. Baker Mayfield has looked really good this year.
He has looked really good. I'm still curious to see how he continues to perform without his top 2 targets. But I do think Baker has the skill set to continue to lead this
He's
Bucs
just got the
offense.
swagger, man.
Yeah, that's what it is.
He's
It's the
got
swagger.
it. He's got the confidence. He's always had it. He lost his mojo for a little bit after Cleveland kind of treated him wrongly.
I'm glad he
but
was able to get it back.
He's looked really good the last 2 years. He was able to get that back. I mean, he's clearly talented. That's why he was the number 1 overall pick. So, again, one of the really feel-good storylines in the NFL this year.
Let's see who the Raiders trade for at quarterback.
The Raiders are in a youth movement, as we like to say around here.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, we're going to talk Jazz at the top of the 11 o'clock hour, but coming up next, Alex, we are going to talk technical fouls, one of our favorite segments each and every week. So that is coming up on the other side. This is the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Time for one of our favorite segments to do, technical fouls. Real quick, though, we got an update on number 4, Ohio State, at number 3, Penn State. Penn State leads 10-7 right now. 10 minutes left to go in the first quarter. Oh, no, sorry. Second quarter just about starting. I really need glasses. I really need glasses.
This is obviously the biggest game of the week. Number 3 taking on number 4. Ohio State has, I think, still a lot to prove after that Oregon loss, right?
Yeah.
And Penn State at home, I really like their chances. So far, it's been an absolute battle between these two sides, and so we'll see what comes out of it. But I like this early top 5 matchup is really fun for not only us as the fans, right, but also, I mean, just as college football in general.
Was that clean, that interception? Wow. Anyways, Penn State undefeated right now. They tend to struggle against the top teams in that conference, but we'll see who comes out on top today. Let's get to technical fouls, though, in case you don't know. This is a segment where we kind of get goofy and talk about some of the silly or stupid things that happen in sports. Alex, you've got a great one. Why don't you start us off?
Talking about the Dwayne Wade statue?
The Dwayne Wade statue.
Oh, jeez. That thing, I don't know if you guys have seen pictures. If you haven't, I highly suggest going to look for it because Dwayne Wade, they built him a statue outside of the Miami Heat arena, which is awesome, right? You love to see that these legends get recognized. But when they look like a 50-year-old man and look nothing like Dwayne Wade, it's not good.
It's hard.
It's not a good statue. And the crappier part, the dumber part about it is the fact that Dwayne Wade helped with the creative process and he helped kind of design the statue. I think that just makes it even worse. Is the fact that he helped and it looks like a 50-year-old man out there on the statue.
They're trying to capture an iconic moment in Dwayne Wade's career, right? The celebration where he's kind of pointing down at the ground and yelling, "This is my house."
Right.
But it's hard to capture, on a statue that raw emotion while also making the likeness look correct and look accurate. So it does look a little goofy. I think our boss, Lloyd Cole, said it best. It looks like the actor Lawrence Fishburne.
It does. It does look like Lawrence Fishburne. Oh, my gosh. How did I not put that together? It looks like Lawrence Fishburne.
That is not supposed to be Lawrence Fishburne. That is supposed to be Dwayne Wade, Hall of Fame basketball player. So technical foul there to the Miami Heat. I want to talk about this one. Bears corner Tyreek Stevenson last week. Obviously, we were just talking about the NFL last segment, but the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears had a thrilling game last week, right? And it came down to the final play. Washington was down. They needed a touchdown to win in the final seconds. The Bears had just scored to go up with not very much time left. Bears corner Tyreek Stevenson was setting up in formation to defend against the Hail Mary. He was sitting in the end zone, awaiting because, again, Washington needed a touchdown to win. Before the play starts, there's a video going around. Tyreek Stevenson is yelling back and forth because the game is in Washington. He's yelling to Commanders fans in the stadium, in the stands. He's jawing back and forth with these fans. Not only before the play starts, he has his back turned to the play. The play starts, and he is still going back and forth with people in the stands. There's another angle of Bears fans pointing and saying, "Tyreek, turn around. The play is starting." So the play starts. Eventually, Tyreek, he realizes the play is underway. He knows where the ball is going. It's a Hail Mary. The irony, Alex, is that Tyreek is the one who he went to swat the ball down, but he kind of had a bad angle on it. He actually tipped it up and allowed the Washington Commanders player to catch it for the touchdown. So he is the player. He's the Bears player that got a hand on it and tipped it up and gave Washington a chance to grab the game-winning touchdown.
Talk about cosmic karma.
Oh my gosh.
You have your back turned to the play. You're not paying attention to what Jaden Daniels is doing downfield, or even looking at the receivers running into the end zone. Right? You're over here taunting the fans.
You're taunting with the fans because you think you won.
You're talking crap.
And then you lose the game.
And then you go over and you tip the ball up. Noah Brown brings it down all by himself in the end zone. By the way, Noah Brown is completely unmarked in the end zone. He's all by himself. You tip it to Noah Brown to bring it down and catch the Hail Mary, right? Talk about karma, bro.
Yeah.
It's just bad. It's a bad look for Tyreek. It's a bad look for the Bears. Man.
Well, and that's why teams do it, right? We've seen it. Like A.J. Green had a highlight play, right, where the guy who catches a Hail Mary sometimes isn't the one in the middle of that scrum. They put a player to go sit in the back of the end zone to catch something that's tipped up like that. And that's why they tell, the defenders, hey, don't go up and go for the interception. Swat it down, hit it down so it doesn't get tipped to a player. And to Tyreek Stevenson's credit, that's what he was trying to do, but it's a bad look because he did it wrong.
Yes.
He tipped it to the Commanders player, and in the middle of the play, he was talking back and forth.
It's borderline embarrassing that you're over here talking crap to the Washington Commanders fans, right, in the stadium, and then you go over and you're the one that makes the play that eventually ends up in the hands of Noah Brown for the touchdown.
He did come out and apologize on Twitter afterwards. He apologized to his teammates and a Bears fans, yada, yada, yada. Who cares?
Come on.
Don't be a doofus.
Come on. Pay attention, bro.
One more technical foul really quick. I want to talk about this. We've got to talk about it. John Gruden has found his way back into relevance after he was fired by the Raiders for some pretty messed up emails that he sent.
Yeah.
But there's these clips of him going around. Apparently it has like a YouTube channel where he like does football breakdowns and stuff. But they're so funny, and I want to play a clip. So here's a clip from John Gruden's YouTube channel.
When I was calling plays, I just loved it when our quarterback shredded the defense. I mean, just ripped them. That's what has me feeling really nicey. Like watching Jared Goff go 18 for 18, 292 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Got me feeling nicey.
I couldn't do that pregame warm-up. Ho! Jaden Daniels, just a rookie, 26 out of 30, 87%, 231 yards. He rushes for 47. He's doing everything. Shredded, baby. Ho!
John Gruden is feeling nicey, Alex. If you haven't seen this, I would highly recommend looking it up because you've got to see, his crazy eyes, his facial expressions that he does. He's wearing his nickname is Chucky. That was his nickname as a head coach in the NFL because he's got the red hair. He's got the crazy face. He looks like Chucky from the horror movies. And so when he's doing these breakdowns, he's got the shirt with a picture of Chucky on it, and it says feeling nicey. He's crazy, I think. He might have a couple of screws loose. But
yeah, I think so. You have to go watch. If you have not seen the videos, you have to go watch it and see the facial expressions, see the crazy eyes, because he's
a maniac.
He's
I think.
Unhinged.
He's trying to get back into coaching. I don't know if the NFL will ever let him back in after some of the stuff that he said in those emails, but he's a lunatic.
Yes, he is. Please go watch the videos if you haven't yet.
Yeah. So technical foul on John Gruden, just for being kind of a dork, but being entertaining, I guess. But yeah, so that's that. Alex, let's talk some Jazz on the other side. The Jazz are 0-5 to start the year. They're the only winless team in the NBA. Let's talk about what the season holds for them and looking ahead to the draft because that's all that matters for this year. That's coming up next. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Great song choice, Sean. You're doing good. You're doing great. So far. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles here. Having a lot of fun on a Saturday morning. Alex, let's talk Jazz. We have to. Yeah. Even if we don't want to, we have to.
I know.
It's been a brutal start for Utah to start the year, 0-5. They're the only team in the NBA that has not won a game yet. Tonight, they're traveling to Denver to take on the Nuggets. It's an 8 p.m. tip-off. Big game for the Jazz, but I want your thoughts on the start of the season so far.
My thoughts on the start of the season so far for the Utah Jazz have not been good. I don't like the fight in this team.
What fight?
There you go. I have still yet to see fight from the Utah Jazz. We did see it against Memphis. That first game, the opener.
Yeah.
They did show a little bit of fight, a little bit of bite. And I thought that was good signs. It was a loss, yes, but they did have a good bounce back. They had a lot of fight, got back into the game, fell by 2 points. But since then, I have not seen fight from this team, and that's concerning.
That's really concerning.
That is very concerning. We knew what this year was going to be. We knew that it was going to be a tough year, a tough start for the Utah Jazz. But the fight in this team is lacking, man. And that's the biggest concern for me.
So, and this is a conversation we've had before, right? But my biggest thing with this youth movement that the Jazz are doing, they don't want to, I mean, they're not going to come out and say they're tanking, right? And I don't think that their sole purpose is to just lose games. Because they truly, I mean, they have so much young talent that, yeah, the goal is really to just develop these young guys as much as possible. But what are you getting when Keontae George is out there in one of the worst shooting slumps that we've seen? I mean, he is just awful to start the year.
And that's what this year is about. It's about developing these guys. It's about developing Keontae, developing the rookie draft picks. But even then, like Keontae, who's a second year, and there's a lot on Keontae's shoulders, right? He's supposed to be the facilitator. He's supposed to be the guy for the Utah Jazz.
Right, which he's not ready to be.
He's not ready to be.
And he's not supposed to be that at this point. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make is like, in my opinion, the best way to develop a guy like Keontae George is to put him in a six-man role, right? Have him lead a bench unit. Don't basically throw him out to the wolves every night and say, okay, shoot yourself out of the slump. He's shooting 28% from the field, 20% from three. He was 1 of 9 from three the other night against the Spurs. How is that developing him at all? How is that helping Keontae George as an NBA player?
I think that just hurts. In the long run, it just hurts your confidence.
And that's what the Jazz did to him last year to close out the season, and it's understandable in that situation because of the trade deadline, because of injuries, because of yada, yada, yada. But I don't like that that's the plan right now because, again, and it's kind of a similar thing with Isaac Wilson, right? Just
Yes.
telling this young kid who is transitioning into a higher level of competition, a new league, trying to figure things out, throwing this kid out there and just saying, go figure it out. You're going to have really bad nights and it's going to hurt your confidence, but figure it out anyways, dude. I don't think that's the right way to go about this. And I am worried. David Locke put a tweet out. David Locke, the radio voice of the Jazz. Keontae George is shooting 28% from the field and 20% from three. Other players who have started a season at sub 30% and sub 25% after 5 games: Steve Nash, James Harden, Cade Cunningham, Jamal Murray, Jeff Teague, Joe Johnson, Donovan Mitchell. I think this is a little misleading because you might look at this list and say, like, these are the only players that have done that. I think this is more. I think there are a lot of players that have done this. These are just notable names that have done it and turned things around afterwards. So there is still hope.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's no doubt that I do believe Keontae can turn it around.
He has talent.
He
we
does.
saw him put together hot stretches last year as a rookie. But it's just, I don't like that this is the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when there's no fight.
No. And like Lowry goes out because of back spasms, and I'm sure that Lowry, the Jazz are going to be very precautious with Lowry Markkanen this year with whatever injuries, just preserving him for the future. There's no need for Lowry to be out there every night. So there are going to be a lot of games where this team, these young players are playing without the veteran leadership. And we haven't even talked about losing Taylor Hendricks to injury. Like that really sucks.
That's a big loss.
Because along with Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks was a name that we were expecting to see take a big step this year. And through the couple of games that he played, he looked really good.
He did.
His shooting numbers weren't great, but as far as his defensive presence
Yes.
and his presence on the board and grabbing rebounds and just being tough and physical like they needed him to be, he looked like he had grown into that role.
Yes. He was looking a lot better to start the year. I liked a lot of things that I saw defensively from Taylor Hendricks. However, now, we talk about where we want to see these 2-year guys come into the season, where we want them to be, where we want to see them develop, right, as we head into the year. But now you've taken that away from Taylor Hendricks. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And obviously, like, again, we want him to have a speedy recovery. We want him to get back and be good. But
it sucks when the plan is to play the young players and the young players get hurt. Because
now
it's like, what's the point?
Yes, now you don't have that for Taylor Hendricks.
So we'll get into my main worry, right? And I'm worried that the Jazz have kind of dug themselves too deep long term. As far as what sort of development you get from Keontae George and these young players who are basically just thrown to the wolves for 82 games. That is, like, saying it out loud sounds ridiculous because I don't get how this helps you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean the Jazz. I don't get how this helps the Jazz at all long term. And if players can figure it out, then good for them, man, because that's tough. But looking at the draft next year, right? Cooper Flagg is the biggest name. He is going to be the number 1 pick. Ace Bailey, another name that has been talked about a lot as being really good. So for Jazz fans, that's kind of the bright spot of losing games. But hey, if we finish with the worst record, we're going to have the best chances at getting the number 1 pick in the lottery. The issue with that, Alex, is the NBA is against tanking. They're against losing games, and they have rigged the lottery to protect themselves from that. If the Jazz finish with the worst record in the league, they only have a 14% chance in getting the number 1 pick. You know who else has a 14% chance?
Who else has a 14% chance?
The second and third worst record in the league.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
well, I mean, look at last year.
Last year, the Pistons had the worst record in the league, and they ended up getting the 5th pick in the draft. And if that were to happen to the Jazz this year, that would be really disappointing. Last team,
it's almost as if this is all for nothing.
Right. And I know it's only 5 games in and I don't want to overreact, but I'm very worried that this is going to all be for nothing. The last time the worst record in the NBA was awarded the first overall pick was 2018. That was when the Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton. And that was under the old system when the worst team had a 25% chance at winning the lottery. In 2019, the NBA changed it to give the worst team a 14% chance. So since they've changed it, the worst record in the league has not been awarded the number 1 overall pick. Last year, the Atlanta Hawks drafted first overall. They had, the 10th best odds?
And they were a playing team.
They were a playing team,
yeah.
And they got the first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the only benefit to finishing with the worst record is you can't get lower than the 5th draft pick, which is worst case scenario. That's what we saw with the Pistons last year. Again, if the Jazz were to finish with the worst record, they would have a 47.9% chance of drafting 5th overall, 12% chance of drafting 4th, 12.7% chance of drafting 3rd, 13% chance of drafting 2nd, and 14% chance of drafting 1st. To put it simply, it's basically a coin flip, right, of drafting 5th overall or not. And then the rest of the draft slots are, a percentage difference.
I'm all for going and getting a high draft pick. Because that helps your chances of getting a top player. In this case, hashtag capture the flag.
If Cooper Flagg is the prize, that is a very good consolation prize.
Yes.
But I don't want Jazz fans to be under the impression of, we have the worst record. That means we're getting Cooper Flagg.
Right.
Because again, that's only a 14% chance. I don't know if people realize how low that is.
That is very low. Especially, again, look at last year when the Pistons were obviously the worst team. They went on this record-breaking losing streak. They had one of the lowest win totals in NBA history. However, you only pick 5th. So in that case, it's like, what is that? What is this for? What is tanking for?
Allegedly, this year's draft, and when I say this year, I mean 2025, the 2025 draft is supposed to be a lot better than the 2024 draft, according to all the experts out there or whatever.
I've heard, yes.
Yeah, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey are the 2 big names. But getting the 5th pick wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But again, that's like worst case scenario. That'd kind of be a disappointment. So to your point, you say, like, what is even the point? If they say that they're going to be developing the youth, I get it. and that would be great. But Taylor Hendricks is out for the year. Keontae George is struggling, and I don't want him to continue to struggle because that's not going to help him. That's hard on a young player. Again, trying to learn the NBA, trying to adjust to this life, to a really high level of competition. I think that's too much to ask of somebody like Keontae George. Maybe it would be different if he was a Cooper Flagg type or a really high-level prospect. But the Jazz drafted him in the teens.
Yeah.
And he happened to be above average as a rookie, but that doesn't mean that he was even on Donovan Mitchell's level. Like, Donovan Mitchell was able to come in as a rookie, and it was pretty clear from day one almost that he was special. And Keontae George, I think, has the ability to be a good player, but I'd be shocked if he was ever as good as Donovan Mitchell was. And that's a really high bar to set.
It
like,
is.
I don't want to talk bad about Keontae George. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying the reality is Keontae George's ceiling isn't quite there. He's not a franchise player. He's a really good role player, and it would be great if he could develop into that. But in my opinion, throwing Keontae out and telling him to shoot 28% night in and night out is not going to fix things. It's not going to develop the youth the way that the Jazz want.
I think from what we've seen so far between Keontae's first year, what we've seen through 5 games this year, is the ceiling is just not. And I mean, it could still come, right? There's still a very long career ahead for Keontae George.
Right.
But just right now, from what I've seen, the ceiling is just not as high as a superstar player
No.
that I think they want him to be.
No, and you can't. I mean, there's 15 players on a roster, right? Not everybody's going to be a superstar. And it's not a bad thing if Keontae George doesn't turn out to be a superstar or even an all-star. Again, it's more, I mean, I would want Keontae George to turn out to more of a Colin Sexton, right? Like a really high-level role player. And I think that's a good comparison for Keontae George. And I don't know. I think, and even Colin Sexton for that matter, like, I don't know, maybe Colin Sexton could impact winning on a championship contending team. But for Keontae George, I really do think the best thing for him, ideally, would be to take some pressure off his shoulders and bring him off the bench. And I don't think that's a luxury that the Jazz really have right now because they're so thin everywhere, because they've committed to this youth movement.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the luxury of bringing Keontae George off the bench and developing him at his own pace. That's why they're kind of forced to do it this way, but I don't think this is a good way to develop players. Somebody said it in the presser, in the training camp presser, pups can't teach pups. And that's why it was important that they brought Lauri Markkanen back. That's why they went out and got Patty Mills. That's why they retained Jordan Clarkson and even Colin Sexton to an extent. They need veterans on this roster to teach these guys the ways of the NBA and to teach them how to win. But even then, like, it's only 4 or 5 guys, right? When your roster is predominantly young guys who have hardly played in the NBA, I don't see how that's a good plan. And maybe I'll get proved wrong in a couple years if things work out, but I'm starting to worry.
That's the hope, right?
That is the hope.
That's the hope. However, I mean, I've been disappointed, maybe that's the right word, with the veteran play on the team too.
Lowry had a good game,
yes,
but he struggled as well. He's had some bad games.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, right now, the quote unquote best player on this Utah Jazz team is Lauri Markkanen. But even then, the veterans, there's been a couple of good individual performances.
Yeah.
But as a team, the veterans have struggled.
Filipowski looked good the other night for what it's worth against the Spurs.
Yes.
Again, a rookie.
But again, we're talking about individual performances.
Yeah,
I've still yet to see it come together as a team. The team in general has just struggled out of the gates. I have not seen a fight from this Utah Jazz team. There's been good individual performances, right? We'll give Filipowski. Lauri Markkanen looked really good at that first game against Memphis. But it takes more than just one moment of individual brilliance
I'm with you. And it's, again, like, how do you make these young players better when you go out and it seems like nobody wants to be there?
Yeah.
And we're only 5 games in, mind you, and it's this bad.
Well,
there are still...
You said it earlier. I don't want to overreact, and we don't want to overreact. But the reality is, like, I don't know when this team's gonna win.
There are 77 games left in this season, and if it's already this bad, like, and maybe they turn things around and things start to look better, and players do start to take a step forward. But it's like, man, that Taylor Hendricks injury feels like a huge loss because, again, he seemed like he had taken a big step. And that was like a bright spot of, okay, we can see where this youth movement is going. But through 5 games, Keontae George has really struggled. Cody Williams, we know the story with him, not really ready to be an NBA player yet, very skinny, has a lot of potential, but he needs to grow into his body and physically develop as well as mentally. Filipowski, again, had a good performance. We'll see what he has. Isaiah Collier, 1 year removed from high school. Again, very young. Not quite ready to be. We haven't seen him yet, and for a good reason. Like, he's not quite ready to be an NBA player yet.
And he's nursing is it a hamstring?
It is a hamstring, yeah.
There you go.
Which hamstrings are kind of notoriously sticky. Like, they tend to bug. Mm-hmm. They tend to stick with you throughout the season. So, again, 5 games in. By the way, I saw this crazy stat the other night. Since the NBA trade deadline last February, the Utah Hockey Club has won more games than the Utah Jazz. Is that what it was?
Yes.
Something like that, right?
Or the same amount. So
the same amount of games. Yeah,
yes.
5 games.
Yes, since the trade deadline, this Utah Jazz team has won 5 games.
Yeah, and they were all last year.
And the hockey club has won 5 games since their inception.
The Utah, not counting the Arizona Coyotes, by the way, the Utah Hockey Club, which just started.
Yes. They've just started this season. And even they went on their losing streak. We'll talk about them later too. But
yeah,
it's not good, man.
No.
It's not good when since the All-Star break, you only have 5 wins.
Since February.
That's insane to me.
Right. And that's the point we're trying to get to is what good is this really doing? And 77 games to go. Again, Jazz tipping off tonight in Denver. We are going to have the game, of course, as we do every game. We are the flagship station of the Utah Jazz, 7 p.m. pregame here on The Zone. That's with my guy, Jake Scott. That's going to be on 97.5 because we also have RSL tonight. So 7 p.m. pregame, 8 p.m. tip for the Jazz at Nuggets. Let's see if Keontae George can get out of that shooting slump or not. And then, of course, Nikola Jokic on the other side. Could be a fun game. Could be an ugly game. We will see.
Could go one or two ways.
Yeah. But as you said, let's talk hockey. Coming up next, we're going to hit 5 minutes of not a lot of time to talk about a lot of different things that's coming up on the other side of this. This is the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. Let's talk 5 minutes of Alex. I want to start RSL.
Let's do it.
RSL with the crucial game tonight, second game of their playoff series against Minnesota. They are in Minnesota tonight. RSL lost, what was it, Tuesday?
It was Tuesday.
And it went to penalty shootout, right?
Went to the penalty shootout, and they fell in the penalty shootout 5-4 to the Minnesota Loons.
So it literally, all intents and purposes, by definition, it is a must-win game for RSL tonight.
Yes, crucial game. I think undersells it, man. You don't win tonight, you're out. It's
You're
over.
out.
It's over. Season's done.
This whole season that had so much traction, so much excitement in the first half of the year, it's all for nothing if you lose tonight.
Yep. I've been, it's unfortunate. I don't know what is the best word to describe the situation that Rouse Lake is in, because yes, the season start was absolutely phenomenal, right? You're contending for the Supporters Shield, which is the top number 1 team overall in the league, contending for the number 1 spot in the Western Conference, right? You were one of the best teams, if not the hottest team, through the months of May, June, and probably early July. And for all that to just come down and boil down to this, you have to win to force a Game 3, to bring it back to America First Field, to have a chance to advance.
Right. If you win tonight, you still got to win game 3.
Yes. And if you don't win tonight, you go one and done.
It's ridiculous.
One and done in the playoffs. You're out, you pack it up, and you start looking forward to next season. And I think that is an astronomical failure, considering where this team was.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, they were the top team in the West for most of the first half of the season. Chicho Arango was leading the MLS in goals. It looked like, I mean, I was getting ready to host a parade in December or whenever
Me too.
the cup is.
Me too.
I was ready.
Yeah.
But where do you think it went wrong? I have a theory. I want to know what you think first, though.
I think two things come into play here. One, the Chicho Arango suspension.
Okay.
He has not been the same since he got
Why
suspended.
do you think that is? Why?
And that leads into number 2, and it's Andres Gomez leaving.
That's what I was going to say. They sold Andres Gomez, what was it? August 17th.
Yes.
Gomez he was second on the team in goals, and him and Chicho were kind of a 1-2 punch. And
they had such a great connection.
They had a great connection, good chemistry going, and they genuinely had fun, like palpable fun and excitement. They fed off of each other. They kind of, maybe they even had a little bit of a competition going, seeing who could score the most goals. Whatever it was, they were both on fire. And I get, as a front office, you've got to set yourself up for future success, and I get that.
Yes.
But breaking up something good,
right,
mid-season,
and I hate that we're having this conversation, because that is the business, right? That is the model. That's what makes clubs successful. You bring in a guy with with a high potential, high ceiling. You develop him. You have him like Gomez, make him have a phenomenal season as he was having, and then you sell him off to Europe, to the big leagues.
He's only 22, Andres Gomez,
yes,
by the way.
That's the name of the business, right? And so I can't fault and I can't be mad at the team or Real Salt Lake for making the move, right? Because it is, in theory, it is the right move to not only boost Real Salt Lake, but obviously to set yourself up for future seasons. But man, I think, and I was having this conversation earlier this week with the RSL show guys, is like this. There's always going to be the what if. No matter what happens tonight, whether Real Salt Lake advances and forces that game 3, whether they're out and we're talking about the end of the season next week, there's always going to be the what if question. What if Andres Gomez never left? And that's just never going to leave, because of how good and how high scoring this Real Salt Lake team was prior to Andres Gomez leaving.
As a fan, you hate that. You hate having the what if.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, just looking since August, really, they really have been struggling to score.
Yes.
Just looking at their schedule since then. And
Chicho has not scored since prior to his suspension.
Chicho, he tied the record? Or is he still one short?
He tied.
He tied the record.
He tied the record.
Before the All-Star
Couldn't
break.
beat it.
He could not break RSL's goal record. And I mean, at the time when he tied it, it was like, oh yeah, he has this in the bag. There's no way that he's not going to score the whole second half of the season.
I had that conversation. I might have had it with you.
Yes, we had it on the show, yeah.
I had that conversation with so many people. I was like, dude, there's no way.
There's no way that he doesn't score again. That at the time, because Chicho was doing so well, it seemed crazy if you would have said, yeah, Chicho won't score a goal the whole rest of the year.
I was fully prepared, man. I was fully prepared to get my MVP ballot in earlier this month, and I was ready to vote Chicho MVP.
Because he was genuinely, not even being a homer, mind you. Like,
exactly.
He genuinely led the league.
He was leading the lead
in points.
In goals, yes. And he was having a better season than Lionel Messi.
Messi obviously has more assists, and I think on a per-game basis was doing better. But as far as totals, yeah, Chicho led the MLS in goals.
He did. Yes.
At one point.
Yes.
And since then, took a huge step back.
Like I said, I was fully prepared to vote for him to be the MVP of the league. But Real Salt Lake have really struggled to find some kind of consistency going forward since August. And honestly, man, they've struggled to find consistency defensively, right? We talked about it a couple weeks ago that this Real Salt Lake team needed to figure out before they got to the playoffs. We got to the playoffs, couldn't find a goal against Minnesota, which... huge credit to their goalkeeper. Stopped Diego Luna twice. Diego Luna had 2 really good opportunities to put Real Salt Lake ahead in game 1. Couldn't. Good saves from the goalkeeper. Real Salt Lake had an opportunity to put this game away in the penalties. one of the Minnesota players missed on the third kick. Justin Glad, defender for Real Salt Lake, skied it over the bar, kept Minnesota in this game. So the chances were there.
But they couldn't capitalize. Now they head into this game at Minnesota, a crucial game, a must-win. You have to force Game 3. Bring it back to America First Fields, which I think they can. I do believe, and I do foresee this one going to the penalty spot again. I just hope Real Salt Lake can pull it off this time. Real Salt Lake fighting for their lives, literally, not literally lives, but the life of their season, I guess, tonight in Minnesota. That's a 6 p.m. pregame, 7 p.m. first kick here on the Zone. Pregame is going to be on both signals. The game itself will be on our 1280 a.m. signal. Alex, you're going to be producing that. Season on the line for RSL. Let's transition. Let's talk hockey. They had a losing streak, 4-game losing streak. It got really ugly there, but Clayton Keller and this leadership group brought the team together, and they were able to break their losing streak against the Calgary Flames the other night, and they looked really good doing it.
Before we get into Calgary, we have to talk about what happened against San Jose.
Okay?
You're up 4-1 with 4 minutes left. How? How do you let them come back, man?
So this was really interesting. By the way, SEG Plus tried out a really cool feature where you could, if the Jazz and Hockey Club are playing at the same time, you could split screen, have both games up, and they had a free trial last week. I don't know if it's still up. But anyways, I was watching, and this was the same night Taylor Hendricks broke his leg. So I'm watching on the left side, Jazz lose Taylor Hendricks for the season. Really emotional scene. Keontae George is crying. You feel really bad for everybody on this Jazz team. You look on the right side, it's like, oh, at least the Hockey Club is up. At least they're doing good. They lead 4-1. They should put this game away. They allow a goal in with like 4 minutes, 45 seconds left. And it's like, okay, that's fine. We'll there's no way they'll come back, right? They put another goal in, then another one, then another, and you go to overtime, and it's like, okay, we've been really good in overtime this year. Clayton Keller's got us. And they lose in overtime. And just as a Utah sports fan, the feelings that I had, like watching that scene with Taylor Hendricks and then juxtapose that to this hockey game and watching them lose in that fashion, like my heart sank. It was really hard.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Watching that, but Connor Ingram had a really good game up until that point, and I think that's the frustrating part. And even the broadcast pointed it out. They were talking about Connor Ingram and how well he had played that night. And 2 of those goals maybe weren't his fault, but there was one especially where he was down, I think, on his knees. He was in really good position to stop the puck, and the player came in for a shot, and Connor Ingram stood up where he definitely should have just stayed down. And I was talking to Cole the next day, Cole Bagley, our Utah Hockey Club insider. I was talking to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. That's just one where he's got to be in better position. So I think what I'm trying to say is the goalie play needs to be better for Utah. Ingram has looked really good at times, but then there are kind of stretches where things like this will happen. So we need to see some more consistent goalie play. But shout out again to the leadership group, Clayton Keller and the other captains for rallying this team and really putting together a heck of a performance against the Calgary Flames, because Utah had lost 4 straight games up to that point. And to rally together, win 5-1, and you have a guy like Lamoureux getting his first career goal, like it looked like that's a good sign from a young team to have a player step up and say, okay, guys, like, I know it's gotten really bad, but don't worry, we've got this. And then they come out and win. That's awesome.
Huge bounce back win, right? Everybody, I think a lot of the fan base, at least from what I saw online after that San Jose Sharks game, a lot of concerns, a lot of disappointment. Obviously, you're up 4-1. You end up losing that one. So I was really curious to see the response from the Utah Hockey Club. I was really curious to see how they bounced back from a really disappointing result. And they did good. I thought they looked a lot better. I thought they did a lot of really good things against Calgary. Happy that they were able to break this losing streak. Happy to get back into the win column. Just hope that it can continue. into this next stretch, right? You have 4 games away. You go to Vegas tonight. You have a game at Winnipeg on Tuesday. Go to St. Louis on Thursday. And then you end up in Nashville next week on Saturday before coming back home and taking on Carolina. So again, this big road trip coming up for the Utah Hockey Club. I just hope that they can continue and carry on this momentum and pick up a couple of good wins on the road.
Last road stretch the Utah Hockey Club they had 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss. We'll see if they can put that together again because that's honestly a pretty good result, right? The Golden Knights obviously are a really good team, so that's going to be a really fun game tonight to see where Utah really stacks up against some of the premier competition in the National Hockey League.
And is there talks about a potential rivalry trying to start
I hope
with Vegas?
so. Yeah, I mean, they're the closest
online.
team regionally. I think it would be really fun to have a natural rivalry there with the Vegas Golden Knights. So let's hope so.
Spicy Tuna, go throw some punches, man.
Spicy Tuna, if
Don't
you
make
play
him hate
tonight,
us.
I don't know if he's going to play. Real quick, shout out to Bill Armstrong, by the way, for making a trade the other day for Olli Määttä.
Yes.
Defenseman, they got him from the Detroit Red Wings. Utah lost Sean Dursey for a while. He probably won't be back unless they make the playoffs. John Marino, another defenseman that they were hoping to have back from injury soon, but he's still at least a month out, it sounds like. So they were really thin there on the blue line. They were able to make a trade for a veteran defenseman, and he had, I think, the second most ice time for Utah the other night against Calgary. And, I mean, I don't know how much of an impact he's going to continue to make, but it's clear he made an impact in their win over Calgary. It was a very good trade. They gave up a 2025 third-round pick. He is in a contract year, so I don't know if Utah is going to bring him back, but this is a move that tells me, like, hey, you know, you don't make a trade for a player mid-season unless you're trying to win something, right? So this tells me that Bill Armstrong wants to see if his team can get close to making the playoffs at least, right?
Yeah, and that's what you hope, right? That's what everybody was kind of talking about in the preseason, is how competitive and how good can this hockey club team be. And you like the move to potentially allow you to continue not only to have, I guess, to have that depth, but also to hopefully continue to compete for a playoff spot. I think it would be a monumental win for the Utah Hockey Club to make the playoffs in their first year.
Oh, that would be huge. The players want it. The fans want it. I can't
Monumental.
imagine what a playoff game at the Delta Center would be like. I hope so, man. Again, Utah Hockey Club taking on the Vegas Golden Knights tonight.
And yes, and before we go to break, halftime between number 4 and number 3, Ohio State, Penn State.
Oh, yeah.
14-10, Ohio State taking a lead. Will Howard had a touchdown, fumbled it into the end zone, out for a touchback. Kick called back.
Oh, that's the worst thing. The Jets did that the other night, too, in Thursday Night Football.
Yes.
Malachi Corley ran it in for what should have been a touchdown. He dropped it on the 1-yard line. Nobody hit him. He dropped it for a celebration. It rolled out of the end zone for a touchback. I hate it.
And this one looked like Will Howard tried to extend the ball to get it, past and for it to be a touchdown. Initially called a touchdown, went back, they reviewed it. Looks like he dropped the ball into the end zone, called back for a touchback. So Ohio State was up 21-10, brought back 14-10 at the halftime break.
All right, we'll hit some other college football scores and wrap this thing up on the other side. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Wrapping things up on the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We've got some fun college football games going on right now. Alex, why don't you tell us what's going on a little bit?
Obviously, just as we mentioned before we head to the break, number 4, Ohio State, currently up on number 3, Penn State, 14-10 at the halftime break. The Miami Canes down to Duke, 21-17 as they head to halftime. Ole Miss up 35-10 on Arkansas, also at the halftime break. Later today, some games of interest for BYU fans, Big 12 fans. Iowa State taking on Texas Tech, set for 1:30, and Kansas State taking on Houston. That one also set for 1:30. Those are probably the big games going on today in the college football slate.
As far as our schedule here on the Zone, I mentioned it throughout the show, but just to kind of hit it one final time, RSL will be at Minnesota, 7 p.m. first kick, 6 p.m. pregame. That pregame is going to be on both signals. The game will be on 1280 only. Then at 7, Jazz pregame as they get ready to take on the Nuggets in Denver. Game is set for an 8 p.m. tip-off. That will be on 97.5. And the Utah Hockey Club, they are at the Vegas Golden Knights. 7 p.m. pregame there, 8 p.m. puck drop. That game will be on 11:60 a.m. and our KSL Sports stream. Real quick before we wrap up, got to mention it. Shout out to the Dodgers for winning the World Series. Can't do a sports show without mentioning that real quick.
Congratulations to the LA Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani, probably the best baseball player.
Good to see him get a championship.
And he gets his championship.
You love to see the greats win one. Kind of reminds me of Giannis a couple years ago when he finally made it over the hump with the Bucks.
Yeah,
like just a really nice feeling. He deserves it. Great
Absolutely.
talent, once in a lifetime player. So
absolutely
good for Shohei there. Join us again next week. Again, going to be a big week, rivalry week here in Salt Lake City. The Utes are going to host BYU. Throughout the week on the Zone, we're going to have amazing coverage every single day. Lots of former BYU and Utah players are going to be joining each and every show Monday through Friday, so you won't want to miss a thing. We're going to have amazing coverage, and that's going to roll into Saturday, including the Saturday show, and then into that pregame show. So, again, so much excitement locally, but that's next week. For Alex and for Sean, I'm Christian. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. This is the Saturday show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.